Hello again, I am Blunty, and the video I planned to put up today can't go ahead because part of it was relying on someone else getting back to me in time, and they simply didn't. This is why I work alone, god damn it. So, not doing anything serious today. We're going sort of light-hearted but earnest. There's something I want to talk about, and it involves a story I've been wanting to tell for quite some time. I think I've mentioned it on streams once or twice, but you know, it's just a story waiting to be told, waiting for the right context so I could tell it, and sort of have it make sense in the story I'm trying to tell, I suppose, within a video. And it's a story about being taken to Hooters by one of the largest companies in PC and gaming, that being Nvidia. You knew that already because it's probably at least in the thumbnail, if not the title, because yeah. Nvidia took me to Hooters once, and it's a really weird story, but I'm going to walk you towards that story because first, I want to talk about why Hooters is on my mind, and it's not for the reasons you think. So the core subject at hand, which the three stories I'm going to talk about sort of all dangle off, interesting choice of words there, Blunty, is Hooters. Dangly Hooters. No. No. So first I'm going to get your opinion on Hooters. How do you feel about Hooters, the chain restaurant, not Hooters as a colloquial term for perhaps owls, or Hooters as a colloquial term for something else? Have you ever been to a Hooters restaurant? Would you go to a Hooters restaurant? Do you want to go? Who would you go with? What kind of group would you take along with you to a Hooters restaurant? Because the second story revolves around that, the choice of Hooters companion and the outrage that one particular Hooters diner has engendered. And the reason Hooters is on my mind at all is because that story started to trend on Twitter this morning, as I called it, and just yesterday, a different story about Hooters was trending. And so two Hooters stories in a row in a day trending on Twitter. I thought, well, now's the time to tell my Hooters story. So the first story hinged off someone's tweet going a little bit viral. Let me have a look at the guy's name is Nick Adams. And in his own Twitter handle, it's got Nick Adams, in brackets, alpha male. Yeah, one of those guys. I don't really know who this guy is. I think I've heard the name before in some other controversial context, I'm sure. His own bio describes him thusly: best-selling author, endorsed by President Trump. Former President Trump, by the way. President of something, presidential appointee, Australian by birth, so a fellow Aussie. A dubious honour to share with this man, I think, perhaps. American by choice. So he's an expat, basically. Went to America and went, you know what, I like it here better than I do back home. I'm going to be an American, and fair dues. But the tweet that triggered a flood of butt spanking goes thusly. I'll have to do this in my alpha male voice. Alpha males eat wings and drink beer at Hooters with the boys. That hurt my throat. Too early in the morning for that. Beta males nibble on tapas and Spanish vegan cafes with their wives. So there's a lot to unpack in those two parts of that sentence. Firstly, alpha males eat wings and drink beer at Hooters with the boys. No, not really. As a former Hooters employee pointed out in the top response to this tweet, as a former Hooters girl, I can assure you only betas who like to think they were alpha males ate there, and we laughed when you left. This is true, by the way, because like I said, as I'll get to, I have been to Hooters exactly once in my life, and I did think to look around at the other patrons and see what their general attitude was to the waitstaff, for example, and a lot of them were, you know, if you took a glance at them, you wouldn't think alpha male. Didn't bring to mind the stereotype of the alpha male, or how alpha males like to think they look like to the rest of the world, you know, zero body fat, super muscly, great big thick beards, and you know, just the barking alpha silverback gorilla, that kind of myth. By the way, the whole alpha male thing is a complete myth. Like a complete and utter myth. It was based on flawed research done by someone who was working with wolves and dogs and whatnot. And it was a deeply, deeply bit of flawed research. And the person who came up with the theory in the first place then reversed that opinion when they figured out where they went wrong. I mean, actually, no, that's complete bullshit. Alpha males are not this at all. But the thing I love most about these self-proclaimed alpha males on social media and stuff is not just the fact that it's based on an absolute bullshit, disproven, discredited theory about what alpha males are, is it's almost always the same type of guys who, you know, are transphobic for a start. They, you know, and they make fun of the 72 genders that kids today believe in. And there's only males and there's only females. Those are the only two genders. Those are the only two sexes. Sex and gender is exactly the same thing. They're immutable. You can't have any other option, even though science disagrees with even that much. But, you know, they you know, men are men and women are women, and you know, that's the fact. That's the absolute. But then they also go along to this whole spectrum of manhood. Alpha males and beta males and gamma males and sigma males and this male and soy boys and, you know, this entire spectrum of what masculinity is. Everything from uber masculine to, you know, quite femme presenting masculine sort of ideas. And they don't really get that directly conflicts with their idea of men are men and women are women. Because clearly they don't believe that. Because they go around calling other men beta males and soy boys if they don't comply with the sociological expectation, the construct, if you will, of what a man should be. Which is all sociological stuff. Nothing to do with chromosomes or genes or, you know, genitalia. It's all how a man acts. It's in the performance of their masculinity that makes them manly, manly, manly alpha men. And they don't, it doesn't process for them in here that's pretty much what, you know, the soy boys and the woke left are talking about when we talk about gender being a sociological construct and gender being a performance. They agree with those people, but they don't understand that they agree with those people. And it's fucking hilarious and deeply sad at the same time that they don't get it, even though they do get it. They just don't know that they get it. It's bizarre. But yeah, I promise you that the ideal masculine manly man does not go along to a chain restaurant, eat hot wings and middling fries, and stare at bums in orange shorts. That's not an alpha male move, is it? Just to go and stare at women. Does that seem very alpha to you? Just to ogle women? You go to a restaurant where you can stare at women in tight outfits. Does that feel very alpha to you? To pay to go and do that? No, an alpha male would attract, you know, sexy women, sexy young fit women in tight clothes to them, wouldn't they? That's what an alpha is all about. Attracting women, getting women to come to you. That's the point of being alpha, isn't it? Being desirable as a masculine icon. Why would you need to go to a restaurant like Hooters just to look at women if you're such an alpha? I don't know. That makes sense to me. The second Hooters story, this is the one I found this morning as I was scrolling through Twitter. Why is Hooters trending again? Is this guy still trending? So I clicked on it, and now the first story is from the New York Post. Mom blasted for taking her son to Hooters for his 5th birthday. Sorry for the lazy attempt at a vaguely American accent. So I didn't even bother to read the story linked to this one. The headline was enough. You know exactly how this story is going to feed out, don't you? It's a nothing story. It's, you know, a mum posted pictures of her kid's 5th birthday on Facebook or something, and a bunch of people felt like they should be outraged because she took her young child to a restaurant where the women wear tight clothes and you know, V-neck shirts. That's the outrage. Like a 5-year-old has no idea what a woman's body shape is like, because the whole Hooters thing is about objectifying the waitstaff, really. And in theory, I'm fine with that. If the waitstaff there are choosing that, they're not just working there because they feel like they have, you know, they need a job. There's no other option. They have to work there. If they're choosing to do that because they like how they feel when they dress like that, when people look at them like that. It's vain, and I don't, I can't relate to that because obviously I'm not a very vain person. Look at how I present. But that's, I don't judge them for that choice. Just, you go to the extreme edge of this and you talk about, the women on OnlyFans or even to the other extreme, to the full-on sex workers. I'm sex positive. I've got no problem with any of that. If that's a choice the person is making, that's, what they want to do. They're proud of how they look. They want to be judged on how they look. They want to use their physical appearance to manipulate money from other people for as long as their physical appearance holds up until age takes it away from them. That's fine and good. Go them. If I was younger and sexier and prettier and I could be bothered going to the gym, I don't know. Who knows? I might have an OnlyFans. Hands up in chat who would pay for that? Nobody? Okay. No, not you. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Troublemaker. Stop. So, Hooters isn't a sexy place. Like, the women don't perform, they don't dance, they don't wriggle around, they don't have poles in the middle of the restaurant for them to swing around. It's mildly exploitative but too many titives in there. Exploitative of women's physical appearance. That's the gimmick of the restaurant. There's no denying that. And the women who work there know this, and the people who go there know this. But taking a 5-year-old to a place like that, what is that teaching a 5-year-old about how to treat women? Well, we don't know, because we don't know what his mum told him about this place, or we don't know what, any man in his life, if there is a father or a father figure or an uncle or, an older brother or someone in his life with a masculine perspective, whatever that means, about how to treat women, how to view women, things like that. Is a 5-year-old even cognizant of that being an issue? There's 2 pictures that were shown, and the dude looks far more interested in the food and the friendliness from the staff than he is, staring at their bums or boobs or whatever. And that's pretty normal for a 5-year-old because, well, they're not full of hormones quite yet that trigger the desire to stare at boobs and bums and stuff that, a fair chunk of the male population will experience at some point. But the thing I don't like about the story is it's obviously just fake outrage. Like, this is nothing. This is a nobody woman taking her anonymous son, and somebody posted about it on social media, and all of a sudden it's on an internationally distributed newspaper headline on their social media. That feels like bullying to me. Why does this need to be such a big story? Who is so outraged that I think the world needs to know about this woman taking her kid to Hooters? This is the world we live in, and it gets more and more wacky and disturbing every time some stupid shit like this goes viral. How do you think this kid is going to be treated by his friends, family, peers from now on in, now this story's gone worldwide? What do you think this mum's life is like right now, being screamed at by the entire internet? You think that's fair for this choice she made? Does she deserve that just for taking her 5-year-old to Hooters? He may not have asked for this, even. Maybe he just likes chicken wings. So, finally, my story about Nvidia taking me to Hooters. This happened in 2016. I should have double-checked this. I'm pretty sure it was 2016. I've been to E3 twice. First time was with Nvidia, so yeah, that would have been 2016. Second time was a couple of years later, 2018, which I went with Lenovo, who was sponsoring me long-term at the time. And that was sort of before and after E3 was only press and media and also open to the public. So the Lenovo one was fully open to the public. The Nvidia one I went to was the traditional, press-only kind of thing, and they were very different experiences. Should come as no surprise, it was much easier to get my work done at the event when it was press only. Not just because of the crowds, but because people understood what you were trying to do and wouldn't walk in front of your camera or, come to try and talk to you while you're presenting. So anyway, 2016, went to E3 with Nvidia, and That was wonderful. It was just me and the Nvidia guy. Like I was only the only Australian they decided to take up, and it was at the suggestion of the Nvidia guy. He was essentially the middleman between folk like me and the media and journalists and reviewers and whatnot, and the company at large. So he had budget enough to take an influencer to E3. He did it mostly, he confessed to me, because he wanted an excuse to go, and the way he would get to go is if he took one of us with him. It was a business thing then. It wasn't just for his own pleasure. He had an excuse to go, because otherwise there was no reason for him to be there, because Nvidia have their own people there already. Cheeky little bugger. I would have done the same thing though. Exploit the system. So anyway, it was a pretty good experience. The hotel sucked. I remember whining about the hotel quite severely. It was just concrete walls, concrete floor, the worst bed I've ever slept in, which really did a number on my back. It was like a foam mattress that was that thick on a slat base. It was horrible, and I whined incessantly about it, which is probably why Nvidia never brought me back to E3. So anyway, it was the day before E3 ran, proper. And so we were just exploring the area, just wandering around LA. And it was about lunchtime, and Nvidia guy said, hey, let's go get some lunch. I went, sweet. And he goes, oh, I know, we should go to Hooters. This is not something he came up with off the top of his head. We didn't walk past the Hooters. I went, oh, let's check that out. This was part of his plan, because we were 3 blocks away from the nearest Hooters, and he knew exactly where it was without even checking the maps. And he had never been there before. So he had checked beforehand, planned this out, waited for lunchtime to come around, and went, I know, I'll get Nate to come to Hooters with me. That way I can go to Hooters and call it a business expense. I initially said no, because I've always been moderately uncomfortable with the idea of Hooters. I don't like, it makes me slightly uncomfortable. Like, I'm not sex repressed or anything like that, but it's always made me slightly uncomfortable to have just the idea of women like that, dressed like that, serving me food. There's something about that which doesn't quite sit right. And maybe it's a autism thing, and maybe it's a social anxiety thing, and maybe even, although I didn't know it at the time, it's a grey ace kind of deal there as well. Just it's the idea of sexuality being divorced from romance. It feels weird to me in that kind of situation. So anyway, I initially said, no, I don't want to go to Hooters. It's weird, and I feel a bit creepy about it. I don't like the idea of Hooters, but he kept at it, and I went, fine, all right, whatever, we'll go to Hooters. Because he was like, oh no, we should go to Hooters. It's not just about the tits. They have great chicken wings, and when you like some great chicken wings, when you like to tell people you went to Hooters and had some chicken, fine, whatever. I didn't snap at him like that. I was just like, ugh, it's not worth the argument. Let's go get some freaking chicken wings and a beer. So we did. So we went into Hooters, and he was being a bit beta male about it, if we're going to use those terms, being a bit creepy about it. I could see his eyes just drinking in the women, which I suppose is one of the points of going to Hooters, but it made me feel very uncomfortable. And he started talking about which waitress had the better ass and which one he hoped served us, because you can probably extrapolate, right? You've been in these conversations before with these creeps who won't stop talking about how women look, even though you're clearly not interested in having that conversation, right? Is that relatable at all to anyone out there? So, waitress came over. She was lovely. Of course, the minimum wage situation versus living off tip situation in America means that servers have to be extra nice to people. And of course, it's Hooters. So all the women there want to make the men there think that they're flirting with them, because that will increase the amount of tips they get. I'm not making that. That is scientific fact. Mythbusters did a thing about it. And there's been a couple of studies recently come out that have talked about how attractive young women students are getting were getting lower grades when they were being, doing the Zoom school thing, when they weren't at school in person wearing skimpy clothes and creepy teachers and whatnot. Those girls got lower grades as a result of that. So it's a real thing that some women exploit how they look, intentionally or unintentionally, and get treated better for it. Obviously, in Hooters, they are intentionally exploiting their looks in order to benefit from beta males. So we had our meal. I was very deliberately sort of focused on my meal and my beer, and sort of trying to gauge the other men that were sitting there. And they're all And like I said in the earlier story, not one of them was what you would think of at a glance as an alpha male. They were very clearly just ordinary, slightly lonely, and or slightly creepy blokes who went there specifically because the women wear low-cut tops and very tight orange shorts. And I don't judge them for that. If that's what you like doing with your money, spend your money that way, that's fine. But yeah, it was a very, very uncomfortable lunch with this Nvidia guy, clearly just using my presence as an excuse, not just to go to E3, but to go to Hooters and write it off as a business expense. And I very specifically remember him joking that we should talk about what we're going to do at E3 tomorrow. So it's officially a business meeting over lunch, so he could claim it on his expense report. Always struck me as very, very creepy, which, as it turns out, was not a bad read for this guy because he is a bit of a creep. I was just sort of getting to know him as a person at this stage. You know, first time I had any extended interaction with each other on this trip. Because we also had to share a hotel room because I guess he didn't have that much of a budget. But not too long after that, there was another completely disconnected story about that really drove home how creepy and shitty this guy was as a person when he, behind the back of one of my peers, one of my fellow Australian creators, would disparage him to other people, talking about his mental health concerns and making fun of him for his depression and his struggles and, you know, what that meant when it came to trying to work with him. And, you know, at the time, I don't think the guy knew that I was bipolar, or autistic for that matter, because I mask it very well in a lot of situations. So I'm sitting there listening to the stories of this guy talking, and when I brought it up with other people, they would tell me stories about how he was also talking behind everyone else's back about everyone else. He was just a gossipy little, sleazy little bitch of a person, and I haven't spoken to him since that day. He doesn't work for Nvidia anymore. It hasn't done for quite some time. The guy who replaced him was a much better guy, and I believe he's still there, although he's in a different position these days, so I don't get to talk to him much. But yeah, this creepy Nvidia guy, ugh. Got a few bad stories about him, but the one I wanted to tell today was the Hooters one, because Hooters became relevant, and this video is now far longer than I expected to be. I expected to riff for like a couple of minutes on each story, but I guess I kind of waffled a bit. If you have made it to the end of the video, thank you very much. I'm Blunty. We'll catch you next time. Thank you as always to the patrons again. So, yeah, a bit of behind the scenes stuff where some PR people are really creepy and will exploit you so they can claim things on expenses and go to creepy places. Not that Hooters is necessarily creepy, but he went there with creepy intent. Know what I mean? It's all in the intent, isn't it?